Welcome everybody to episode 92 of Drum Education Live, and today we have Richard Spaven with us.
I don't know what to do.
That's enough. You look cool.
Put the kettle on.
Yeah, put the kettle on, make us some tea. We're going to talk about all things drums and stuff, but first, what do you think is missing from drum education, if anything? I know it's a big question.
That's put me on the spot sort of question, isn't it?
I know.
Drum education. I'll kind of go wide angle and just like, I love the drum scene. I love the fact that as drummers we have a scene, right? And we all get together and we do stuff like master classes and drum shows and talk about gear, and you know there's a whole big scene around drums and drummers, and it's fantastic and I love it. But I feel like music is the thing that gets overlooked sometimes, with getting carried away about sticking patterns and chops and little bits and bobs and just forgetting what it's actually all about, and that's the drums, our connection to music.
Agreed. One thing I struggle with, I don't know about you guys, is if I've got a student and they're not actually into music, and I can offer, examples of what I think is good, but having that passion and finding what you like is often a whole other thing that the student needs to try and explore on their own, possibly.
Yeah, well, like, what were you doing when you were their age? You know what I mean? Like, I was always into music, and like hip hop just came and found me. Do you know what I mean? And I never really talked to my teacher about hip hop because he was a big band jazz drummer, when I was a kid. But it's like I still had some connection and like interest. You've got to go up the record shop and buy a record and get excited about it. It's part of it, right?
Definitely. And what I think is good, you might not like it. Felipe is going to hate it. You got to find.
You know me so well.
I know. You got to find what you like, and that, I don't think you can teach that. I think the student needs to seek it.
You've just got to go and do music yourself, I think. You know what it's like. It's never like the person, you always think you're cooler when you're a kid, and wouldn't expect your teacher to like the same music unless they have me as their teacher.
And then they'll be like, just tell me what's cool, please.
But there are some teachers that I think they're disconnected with the beginnings of drumming or music, because I remember having a student that was 12 years old, and obviously he was a huge Nirvana fan, and his previous teacher told him, Nirvana is rubbish, you need to listen to Miles Davis. And it's like, which 12-year-old's going to listen to Miles Davis?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a strange thing to be saying. But yeah, I don't know. They're probably less likely that 12-year-olds will listen to Miles Davis the further we get from Miles Davis years. But it's there though, isn't it? For when anyone is ready.
Exactly.
Black music, it's there.
You cannot, you have if you have always to as a starting point, start from where the student is, and if they don't really if they're not really connected to music, present to them many different choices and maybe they're going to connect.
Yeah, or just encourage them to just find it for themselves. I had one student, like it's a long time ago, and like when he was a kid, and I still teach him, strangely enough. But I remember the day when I introduced him to James Brown, and he was a kid. He just didn't know who James Brown was, and it's funny, the reaction from some people with that story is like, "Oh my God, he's never heard of James Brown," you know. And I was kind of like almost envious of him going home and just having his mind blown by hearing like Clyde Stubblefield for the first time. Although, let's face it, that won't actually be the first time he's heard Clyde Stubblefield because of Funky Drummer and everything, but it's the first time that he knowingly chose to listen to James Brown, Clyde Stubblefield.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's a moment.
This mind-blowing moment is what we need to try to get with our students.
Yeah, difficult one just to sort of like import that on someone, because really it's when you find that stuff for yourself that's when it really moves you and sort of changes your life, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yes, I do.
Talking about teachers, I've read that you are mostly self-taught, and yet I know you were taught by a big band guy. So when did that all come together? You learning and then getting a teacher, and was he your only teacher?
Yes, I had one teacher. So I was just super young, and then it was like a friend of my dad's at work sort of thing recommended someone. So I started going to drum lessons when I was 8. So
wow.
For me, it was like all the discipline stuff was in the beginning with a teacher. He was big band, so it was like orthodox grip and lots of books and lots of rudiments and lots of technical stuff. But I didn't mind that. I was the sort of student who just did what my teacher told me and just shut up and got on with it and practiced everything. I think I was a bit annoying sometimes because some stuff he'd give me and he'd be like, yeah, finish that page. And I would just come back with the whole book finished. Like,
oh, wow.
But I'd just done it. Some things I found easy, not everything. But, that was all sort of like discipline and technique, which I'm so grateful for. And it meant that I could actually play in big bands when I was like 12 or something. And I just sort of wanted to do what my teacher did, but at that time I was probably listening to hip hop, hadn't really made the connection between drums and hip hop, because drums were just sort of like following my teacher around and stuff, just being a good student. That took a little while to sort of put two and two together. And when I stopped having lessons with Freddie Wells, his name was, and when I stopped having lessons with him, I just did it alone, basically. That was, I just sort of started to decide what to practice for myself, which is quite difficult.
How old were you then?
That's probably from like 16 onwards.
And what made you want to have drum lessons?
I was too young. I didn't know what I wanted. It was just my dad's idea. He'd just seen that I was kind of, just sort of keen, basically. So he just hooked it up. Yeah, without me, I was not a decision maker. I'm hardly a decision maker now, let alone at 8.
So basically, your father wanted drum lessons, and then he decided to put you to having drum lessons.
No, he was quite happy being a terrible clarinetist.
All right.
Yeah, he needed clarinet lessons. That's for sure.
Oh. So when you were 16, no teacher.
Yeah.
Like, you must have been quite disciplined to just practice on your own, know what to do, or did you feel fairly confident that by that age that you knew?
Absolutely not confident at all. But I sort of, to be honest, my schoolwork started going downhill, and my drumming was going fantastically well. But um, it was it was just at that time when I realized that actually wanted to do this, right? But it felt ridiculous. It felt like a ridiculous thing because it felt so out of reach. Um, and I must say, having been in a teacher tutor position to some students who are that age now, looking back at me that age, I never had anybody who could just tell me what the situation was for me. You know what I mean? Like just to lay it down, like you need to do this, or this is realistic, or just go for it, or any sort of like any idea. Someone who would just say like, oh, you could get some gigs around town, or you'll be all right, or maybe get a side job, or just whatever. I just had no idea. So it was just sort of from the off. It was just kind of like, um, in fact, it was a promise to myself, which I clearly remember. I was sitting at my kit at home. I was about 16, 17. And, I was getting into a practice kind of regime, because I knew that I was very much an amateur drummer and I wanted to be professional. And that was only going to change by a lot of hard work. So I promised myself that if I was going to do it, and I was, that um, I wasn't going to do it half-assed, and that I was going to just actually just do it. You know what I mean? Not think that I'm doing it and not be doing it. Just really just put the work in. And also at that age, 16, 17, 18, is when you start having a social life, and late nights, and I didn't want to miss out on all that, and I didn't. I just set the alarm and just got up early and did 6 hours practice the next day. Just
Oh.
just had to. And I don't think I'd be doing what I'm doing if I hadn't have done that. I'm grateful to my 16-year-old responsible self.
Exactly, because it's very hard.
Yeah,
It's very hard to find a 16-year-old that's that committed to practicing 6 hours a day.
Yeah, and by yourself as well. Most people pay thousands of pounds and go to an institution and take away a piece of paper that make them feel like they worked really hard. But that's not realistically going to get you the gigs that I got, when I started getting gigs. But as well, just to fill in any blanks that people might be thinking, like, from that time, it wasn't like it was all plain sailing. It was like hard yakka, and it was like some horrendous like part-time jobs as well, really bad ones. And
maybe the incentive came from the horrendous part-time jobs.
Well, I don't know where the incentive came from. It was just this sort of like, it was just this feeling like, could this be done? Is this possible? I wasn't from a family of like go-getter sort of people who would take risks or do anything out of the ordinary necessarily, and so this was pretty bold, So I just sort of quietly, it was like a quiet experiment with myself to see if it was possible, and it turned out that here we are.
Cool.
I love that. Well done, you. Well done, 16-year-old you. It's awesome.
Well,
I mean that.
It does mean that I don't really teach many 16-year-olds, but if I see someone who's just not committed, then it makes me lose interest as a teacher, because it's just like, well, why are we doing this? You know what I mean? And I guess that's why, because it's like, well, you've got to give me some kind of sign that you have some sort of commitment in there, otherwise it's a waste of time, Well, not a total waste of time, but you know what I mean, in terms of like if we're talking career.
But were you career conscious when you were 16, or what was just something you were practicing because you wanted to play drums in a big band and be famous or whatever?
It wasn't famous. I was sort of like, I was listening to a lot of like UK jazz scene stuff. There was a whole sort of wave of stuff at that time, and it was just sort of like be a musician, you know. And I guess I'd already played drums for 8 years at that time, which is like 50% of your life when you're 16. It feels like a long time. I felt kind of attached to drums, and I knew that I was sort of, it was like the thing that I was good at as a kid, you know. And so I guess I saw some sort of opportunity there, but I wasn't driven by anything unrealistic, like I want to play at Wembley Arena, and you know what I mean. It wasn't like a stars in your eyes type of scenario. I've got a gig at Wembley Arena next year, funny enough, but that's by the by. That's not what I was thinking about when I was 16 making this promise. It was just sort of like, I know that I need a career. I want to focus on something. This is going to be it. I don't know if you can make money out of this. I have no idea.
Who's the gig with?
At Wembley Arena, it's with Oil Kana.
Awesome. What date is it?
I have to look at my calendar for that.
Okay.
Can you get Kira tickets? That was the next question.
I'll tell you what, it's sold out in about 48 hours, 16,000 tickets.
Whoa, that's insane.
And it's hip hop.
I'm not interested then. Joke. Jokes.
No, it's not a joke. Well, and what did you practice when you were 16? Because I'm curious about, I wouldn't know what to practice.
16th of March. Yeah, see, that's the thing. Now I'm really good. I'm really good at designing things to practice. And for students, I've been teaching today, and I actually really enjoy getting into a student's head and finding out what is missing, or what needs work, or just any weak spots or strong areas, and you know, what anything it is. But just like, I love like designing stuff to help people just kind of like bolster their playing really and improve. When I was 16, I guess the stuff that I was doing with my teacher was the sort of springboard for what I was teaching myself. Loads of it was like four-way sort of coordination. It wasn't new breed, but it was very similar to that sort of stuff. And then I just kind of, I just sort of expanded on that and turned all the combinations into like just never-ending, like crazy kind of fives and sevens, and sort of my own kind of stuff, really. Sounds a bit vague, but I did a bit of sort of technique stuff and a lot of coordination stuff, and a bit of playing and a bit of reading, and I mean, I had a lot of time, you know, 6 hours a day. It'd be 5 or 6 hours a day. And what I haven't realized until, you know, way more recently, is probably doing it that way has also meant that I've just got used to doing things my way, and potentially that's contributed to me being somebody that people have said sounds like I have a sound of my own.
That's important. That's very important.
And I think that's quite difficult to get, especially if you're aware of it. It's something that you want. It's like, that's a difficult question for anyone. Is like, you want to sound like yourself. How are you going to do that? What's the first thing you go and do? It's difficult.
True.
Massively. I don't know. But you had so much time to discover. And I think with the youth today, like they don't necessarily want to put that time or spend hours discovering the thing that they like or the thing that might be their thing. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, well, I do. I fully know what you mean, and I don't really fully understand all of that. Trying to make lessons engaging and enjoyable all the time. I'm like, not all of it can be. I'm sorry. It's like you need to just get your head down and just do it. Do we not learn the alphabet because it wasn't fun enough to learn it or something? It's like how much dressing up and things can we do? You know what I mean? It's just there's a lot of, I feel like teachers pander too much to students sometimes, and that can really, I think that gets negative when it's situations like groups of students learning at the same time, but just headphones on and just sort of jamming and not no discipline being put in place. And, again, like I say, it's got to come from the student at some point.
Definitely. I love that. Real talk. It's like if you don't want to put the work in, what are you doing here?
True.
Well, there's a lot to be gained from playing drums. I know there's older people in later life who start playing drums, and it's like I can totally understand how playing drums just makes you feel better. Like, I mean, the whole COVID and lockdown situation, great. It's never been clearer to me the difference in myself between me having not played drums for a week and then me getting in and having a good shed for 4 hours. Totally different person, and just engaged and like tuned and like just aligned and everything. It's like we don't just have to look at either be a pro or just give it up. It's like I think it's like it must be the most rewarding instrument in terms of what it gives back to you, just from, I think, because it's so basic in some ways, right? We just we hit stuff, and it's outrageously just kind of what's the word, like meditative. What's the word I'm on?
Therapeutic.
Therapeutic. Thank you. Yes.
Yeah.
It is.
100%. Everyone knows in my house if I haven't played drums. It's like, keep away from her.
Get the kit out. Yeah.
Get her in a drum room now.
Let's go.
Let's talk about your setup. I know you are asked this probably every day of your life. But when I saw your setup, I was like, pardon?
You freaked out about that.
I was like, I honestly had an epiphany and I was like, I'm a quite short person. People who aren't watching and don't know me, I'm quite short. And I've got this, 22-inch kick drum and my toms, and then Rich is over there. I'm like, oh, yeah, his bass drum, it's great. It's like, 18-inch? And then your toms are really flat, and it just was like, oh my God, this looks good. I look like a dwarf behind my kit. What am I doing? But no, I really loved it. Freaked me out, the huge hi-hats and all of that stuff. But I know you did a gig in Leeds, not that I've been listening to everything you've been on, and you were given an 18-inch kick many years ago, and then from that moment you were like, this is my setup.
Yeah.
Before then, what did you use? Did you still have did you try and have lower toms? Did you always have a minimalist setup?
No, not always. Not always. I was kind of flat snare drum quite early on. I love a flat snare. See that you're not a flat snare, are you?
Kinda. It's just a tiny bit.
So it's not flat.
Tilted. All right, all right, all right, all right. All right, but it's not like, you know, tilted for like traditional or whatever, is it?
I don't know where it came from. The minimalist thing is just like it's. I don't know where that came from, but the size thing was like 18-inch bass drum. The first time that I played one, it was that gig at Leeds College of Music, and that was like I was playing there doing a show, and I used one of the college's kits, and it was a little Yamaha 18-inch bass drum, jazz size is 10, tom, 14, and after that gig I came home and just ordered one. I bought one, and that was my kit forever, and I've stayed on those sizes ever since. But to me, sonically, right, because I'm into a lot of hip hop, a lot of drum and bass and jungle, and a lot of like program sort of genres, electronic genres. Like when all the classic breaks took place in kind of 70s, we mentioned like Clyde Stubblefield already. The era of like classic breaks, Aim and Break, Funky Drummer, Pink Break, and all these classics. I feel like a lot of those were in the era of recording when drums was sort of a bit more pitched up. It wasn't like 22-inch bass drum with full of pillows and a snare that just goes doo. Snares were like cracking and the kicks were just higher pitch and miking was different. And I love the sound of like breaks. I listen to loads of break stuff, and always looking for original breaks and that sort of era of drum sound. So when it comes to playing a kit myself, it's sort of that sound that I'm going after a little bit. So as kind of a sort of a classic vibe, but playing sort of contemporary styles on that kind of a tuning. So it's basically a jazz kit.
But I guess it also contributes to your own sound.
Yeah, because it is slightly weird, It's playing pretty drum sort of centric stuff, like jungle and drum and bass on pretty much the smallest kit possible. I've also got a small car, much smaller than Kira's, with just so everyone knows, after the masterclass that we did together, like I was just slotting my bass drum into the back door without putting the seats down, as well as this thing when you've got an 18-inch, you haven't got to put the seats down. Straight in the side door of my Seat Ibiza. Kira was there, seats down with the whole Jeep, everything. Kit 22, getting into the back.
I know. And then I was like, let's help him. Let's help him load up, and you're finished.
Help carry it all out. Yeah, it was insane. I was just in the car and gone.
It's a true story, ladies and gents. Get a smaller kit. It's well easier. Also, do you have, because you're a Yamaha artist, do you have the light hardware?
No, I don't.
You're going to get it?
I would like to have it, yeah, because it's like, I mean, you could just put the hi-hat stand across your finger and just like hold it.
That's what I need.
Yeah. My back tells me that I've carried enough, heavyweight hardware in my time. But it's really good and crazily sturdy. And let's face it, Yamaha make the best hardware. Can we agree on that?
Yes, for the episode we will.
I definitely agree. I've tried the lightweight one. I was absolutely gobsmacked. Like I had the snare stand and I just threw it and caught it, clearly.
Okay, good.
It was it was insane.
Can we just talk about talking of insane, the size of your rack tom compared to mine. I think Kira's, how big was that thing?
12.
Well,
Only. It looks like 13 at least. 13 by 13.
I thought it was like a mounted 40. Yeah. It's huge. And when you hit it, it was, so this is Kira's rack tom. I think it was lower
Oh, God, yeah, it's really low.
than my bass drum.
Probably was. It probably was. And then my floor tom,
Yeah.
it's just stupid. Stupid.
Yeah.
It looks big because I'm small, you know. But thanks for noticing my beautiful
Thanks
kit.
for making fun of Kira's tom.
You haven't got it there to show us, have you?
Yeah, she does.
It is. It's behind me.
Yeah, we cannot see it.
You're not going to make me go get it, are you?
You see, that is a snare drum. I think it's 16 by 10.
Yeah, that thing, I see it.
What are you talking about? This?
Yeah. Is it 16 by 10?
No. What's the matter with you? Right.
24 by 18.
Yeah, it's 26, guys. Anyway, back to your setup. Love it. Your hi-hats are 16 inches. Is that it now? You know, forever?
Can't go bigger.
You will?
I can't.
No, you can't.
You know, people have put like 20-inch crashes together and stuff, and it's like,
I've seen it.
it's starting to, it's like, oh, wait a minute. How far are we going with this?
But
Just
see,
logistics, you know, like.
But see, I'm old school, so I don't understand. So the guy has, you know, let's use you as an example. You have an 18-inch bass drum. So a 20-inch hi-hat doesn't make any sense. The hi-hat being bigger than the bass drum.
You know what the funny thing is though, like I use really big cymbals and small drums. I don't know what that's about. 16 hats, 22 ride, 20 crash. About it.
I like it.
I'm all for big stuff. I was a teenager in the 80s, so it was like big drums.
You're a big drum man.
Yeah.
Bass drum size?
Well, I use a regular 22 by 18, but you know, I would love to have a 24.
Oh, freak me out.
Maybe two 24.
No. I'm just sick of carrying it all now, to be honest.
Well, I wasn't talking about
done.
carrying. I wasn't talking about carrying. I was talking about playing.
Yeah, he was talking about having it.
Alright.
Having. Might not even play. Just have it in the cupboard. I
Just
have
have
a
it there.
24-inch bass drum.
Just having, yeah.
Setbacks. Often on socials, it's hard to see any grind, any tough lessons learned. So can you share any experiences you've had that probably seemed really awful in the moment, but it's shaped you?
I don't know about awful. I mean, I could relate to so many things that have shaped me. I've done some horrible gigs. Like haven't we all? But I can't think of a thing really that's just. No, I don't know. I've definitely had setbacks, but 16-year-old me was ready for those. Maybe, you know, it's an experiment. Yeah, I don't know.
Okay. Being free in the moment, like you do that. That's kind of your thing. Have you ever been in your head too much at a gig?
Oh yes.
And how do you get out of that? What do you do to reconnect to present?
I mean, just now we just did a gig in Manchester on Monday, and just I'm just quite a self-conscious person, and I can get in my own head. And it was just with my band, the three of us. We had a break, and we just had a good chat about it because it was like a sit down crowd, and we got introduced in a kind of formal kind of way, you know, and it just made it feel all a bit too formal and serious. And I don't always feel like that's the best way to, or to feel like people are engaging with your music in that way. We just had a good chat about it. About, you know, I felt like we were sort of playing to that a little bit. Yeah, we just had a good chat about it. But the second half of the show, we just had more sort of eye contact and just had more laughs, and probably took it less serious. No, we didn't take it less seriously. We took ourselves less seriously. And I find that's I quite enjoy showing people, because they come and see me play, and sometimes it feels like, I don't know, a big deal or something, you know what I mean? You've made this effort to come, and they have expectations, and you know, they've probably maybe heard something that I've done before. And it's nice just to show people that you don't actually take yourself too seriously. Like, we can just try and be great at doing something and really be dedicated and committed, but we can also have a laugh along the way and not take ourselves overly seriously.
And engage with the audience as well.
Yeah.
Because sometimes if you're too much in your head, you end up not paying attention to the audience. And ultimately, that's who we're playing for.
Yeah, the thing with this is that it's my band, so I can't ignore the audience in terms of like talking to them in between tunes as well. So that just that's had its moments for me in the past, as in I was a sideman for years and years and years and years, and then I started doing my own project, and then I was like, not only am I feeling like I have musical responsibility for all of this, but I also have to front the band like physically and talk to everyone, and that was a big step for me. I've just got used to it. I think just going back to me being 16, decided to start doing things my way and just to give it a go. I think that's also worked for how I address an audience with a microphone. It's like, well, I can't do anything that I'm not already doing. Like, if you look at my Patreon, you're not going to see me talk in a funny voice that's like, hey guys, so today we're looking at the 6-stroke roll, and listen how excited I am about that. You're not going to hear me talk like that. It's just going to be me talking as if we were just there talking about 6-stroke rolls, and I happen to love 6-stroke rolls, but you're not going to hear my voice go up and get screechy and excited about it. It's the same thing talking to an audience. It took me a while just to find the confidence that I could just talk to an audience just how I talk to anyone. And it's actually sort of turned around in a really favorable way, in that we can just have some extremely funny moments on the mic with an audience and my band. And it's actually turned into something that I really enjoy doing. But I feel like you need to be ready to not be dazzled by a showman, you know what I mean? And just be humane and just have a sense of humor, basically.
Cool.
Yeah.
There.
That relates to a question I was going to ask you about nerves, because you were really kind when I met you, because I was really nervous, and you were talking to me about how you've been nervous in the past of doing, you know, drum clinics or whatever. And so do you think it's about having acceptance over yourself to get over these nerves and just be, you know, totally accepting of, well, this is me right now, this is the best I can do, go? Do you think that's the key, or do you think there's some other thing that we should, I don't know, look at when we're nervous?
I think that's true. I don't know if that's the key. I think for me personally, and I've started talking to students about this as well. There's certain scenarios and triggers that will just are going to create like a nervous situation, and like what I don't think is ever useful is if anyone considers themselves to be a nervous person just because they get nervous on stage, and then you start to relate going on stage. There's an element that you should be nervous. You're about to, bear all in front of an audience of people, and it's like that. I think accepting that is natural is a good start. Not taking it too seriously all the time is also another good start. But for me, there's certain things where I just know that I'm going to have to deal with some sort of nerves. That tends to be things like first gig. You know what I mean? I still have loads of first gigs with different bands. And Law Kana, we just did a tour. The end of this year, end of 22. We rehearsed for 3 weeks prior to that, and what I didn't realize, because I haven't rehearsed for 3 weeks straight like that ever, I don't think, for anything. What I didn't realize is that 3 weeks rehearsal means, damn, when you get to that first gig, there's a whole lot of pressure to not make a mistake, because you feel like you must know everything because you've rehearsed for 3 weeks. But there's certain stuff that you can't learn until the first gig. You've sort of got to get in there and don't expect it to be perfect, and just consider it to be just part of the process. I think it's how you deal with the nerves. Sometimes I can really focus through it and use it to focus myself. Sometimes it will just interrupt my concentration. I mean, I'll just fluff something and chastise myself for fluffing it, and then chastise myself for chastising myself and not getting back to thinking about what I'm doing. When your mind is so skittish and nervous and it can't. I play best when I'm just not thinking about anything. When I'm just thinking about loads of stuff, I'm just like, oh, please, just slow down your mind. That's what it's all about. But there's nothing like a good drum event to make you nervous, because it's just a combination of everything. It's like you feel like your skills are being scrutinized. And I mean, your drumming skills, your presentation skills, your best man speech, sense of humor skills, like just everything feels. It's like it's the Richard show, it's the Kira show, and you're Graham Norton and you're hosting the whole thing suddenly, and it's like you're like, I'm not qualified for this. I had drum lessons when I was a kid. I don't know, how am I supposed to feel comfortable doing this? And the first drum show that I ever did, this is why I'm quite happy. It's quite happy to talk to you about any nerves that you might have doing something like that. The first drum show that I did, London Drum Show, was the most nervous I've ever been for anything in my life. And it just turned out to be a very rewarding experience, and taught me really that I had to go through that just to see from the other side that it's possible just to overcome these things. And also that they look different once you've done them. Playing to drummers has become a different thing. Not, I'll still be more nervous for a drum show than I will be for a gig where I've played the music loads of times. But it definitely taught me that drummers in general, I would say, are really open to ideas and just concepts, and talking about music and drums and interesting stuff like that. I think if you're enthusiastic about what you're talking about, this turned into a huge answer. That's my main tip, if anyone is making any sort of presentation, is if you're just genuinely into what you're talking about, presenting or playing, it will take care of itself.
True.
Question.
You've got a question.
Go ask.
The jumper.
Yeah?
Yeah, that's my question.
What about it?
I mean, when did you get it?
This is an old classic. Everyone, I'm wearing a Christmas jumper.
Yeah.
I bought this, 4 years ago. 4 years ago, wore it when I was pregnant. It's like massive. It's brilliant. Do you want me to send you one?
Have you got my address?
No.
Okay, good.
So rude. Right. On that note, tell us about your Patreon, please. If people want to become a member, and how did that come about, and what can people expect?
Patreon's good for people like me who've been teaching and being enthusiastic and have loads of ideas for a long time, and just want to put it all into one place. And the people that sign up for my Patreon are just people that, I don't know, I've met on master classes, or people that listen to my music, or people that come to shows that I do, and I guess they just hear something in my playing that is interesting or different or left field or whatever it is that I do that people like. And that's really what it is. It's like, I mean, the most popular tier on my Patreon is you pay £15 a month, and you get 2 tutorial videos a month, and that will be all about stuff that I'm either currently enthusiastic about or just sort of drum stuff. It's like lots of stuff, you know, like we were saying about just creating the right things to practice. It'll be like a lot of things that aren't just kind of, it's not like just very literal stuff like here's a 6-stroke roll. It's things that are gonna make you think whilst you're playing and make you develop kind of musical skills more, and what I talk about on there, which is like orientation skills, which is just understanding where you are in the music at all times, whilst you might be doing something that's very kind of angular to, you know, and opposite to what is actually where the straight time is sitting, and just sort of developing a sort of wider sort of mental space to be able to sort of play weird stuff, or not weird stuff, but just to play what you want to play in that moment and be orientated at the same time.
Cool.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
So welcome. Thanks for having me on.
It was great.